Discovered my husband secretly gave our house to his mom after I paid the mortgage for years. Now it's getting auctioned, and we're getting divorced. Introduction. I'm a 38-year-old woman married to my husband, Alex, a 37-year-old man, for 3 years. Our married life had been going on pretty normally until yesterday when I found something very suspicious in my husband's study room. How it all began. I met Alex around 6 years ago when I was new to the city and started a new job. Alex was already settled here, living with 2 of his brothers in a rented condo. His family ran a grocery store in the suburbs. We dated for a few years, during which he bought a house and paid for the down payment. Our wedding plans were initially delayed because Alex wanted to have a house before getting married. He had a thing about owning a house. Financial struggles and agreement. Soon after the marriage, Alex lost his job and struggled to pay the mortgage. I covered it for a few months until he secured a new job, but his new position didn't pay enough to keep everything afloat. We reached an agreement. I would pay the mortgage, and he would add me to the deed as a co-owner. It seemed like a fair deal to me, especially since my new job was paying well. After working here for 2 years, I had saved enough to buy a property, so this arrangement felt even more reasonable. Discovering the deception. For the past 3 years after our marriage, I've been paying the house mortgage. With only 7 months left on the mortgage, yesterday, I was at home alone and, out of boredom, decided to clean the house. I usually don't enter his study room because he doesn't like his stuff moved, but this time, something compelled me to clean it. While tidying one of the bookshelves, I stumbled upon an envelope with the name of the housing society we were living in. Inside, I found an updated house deed. I initially thought Alex had updated it to add me as the co-owner, but no, it showed that he had changed the ownership of the house to his mom. The house I had been paying the mortgage for the last 3 years was now legally his mom's, and he hadn't informed me. I checked the date on the document and found it was months old, indicating he had deliberately kept this from me. My mind raced with several possible explanations, but none seemed good. It felt purely malicious, and now I felt like I had been married to a stranger. Planning confrontation and seeking legal advice. I was yet to confront him because I didn't want to do so without digging deeper into the matter. I took pictures of the documents to show my lawyer and decided to put on a pretentious mask, mirroring the facade he had maintained for years. Update 1. Legal confirmation and planning revenge. Hello all, I got the details from my lawyer friend regarding the house deed. It confirmed that Alex had indeed transferred the ownership to his mom since there were a few months left on the mortgage. The deed mentioned that ownership would transfer post-mortgage. I felt so betrayed. I had been making all those big and small sacrifices to pay the mortgage so that he could get rid of the obligation, only for him to give the house to his mom without my knowledge. I wanted to have a full-blown confrontation with him right away, but he wasn't in town. A few months ago, Alex was offered a new expansion project to set up a team in an adjacent city, so he was mostly out of town, visiting home monthly or twice a month. I preferred having a direct conversation instead of a phone call, so I waited, planning my revenge. A week after discovering the deed, I received a text from Alex reminding me about paying the mortgage. That text made my blood boil, and I instantly decided not to pay any further installments. That's when I chose to avenge his betrayal. I went to the bank and changed the contact details from Alex's number and email ID to mine, ensuring he wouldn't receive payment reminders or calls. Alex had to confirm this change, and once done, I ignored their payment reminders and calls. I defaulted for 3 months and received a message from the bank stating that if I didn't pay for another couple of months, the house would be auctioned. Good for me, but there was more to it. Investigating further. To understand why Alex did this, I needed more information. A brief context about Alex and his family. Alex's family is from down south. I won't name the place to avoid unnecessary conflicts. They were never able to own a house because his dad had to start his living from scratch. Alex has 4 siblings, making it difficult for them to own a house while providing for a family of 7. While we were dating, Alex told me he always wanted to own a house before starting a family. This was an inherent dream of his parents. However, since they couldn't afford one, Alex wanted to ensure his children grew up in their own home, which they called an ancestral house. I never suspected anything shady. I understand that owning a house holds sentimental value and a sense of security, but it should be from his money, not mine. He cannot do this while keeping me in the dark. Our married life began to deteriorate. We both were playing mind games. We were never very cheesy or mushy. Sometimes I initiated romantic date nights, but I stopped doing it, and Alex never complained. He was living in a different city for the project and occasionally came home, making things somewhat bearable for me. Update 2. Hiring a private investigator. Hello all. Thanks for all the suggestions. Some of you commented that I should find the reason behind his actions instead of assuming things and ruining everything. Even my lawyer friend suggested this. So, I decided to dig deeper. Initially, I tried to uncover the truth myself but couldn't figure out anything. Anticipating a possible affair angle, I checked his phone when he came home, but it was clean. Instead of spending days and nights scratching my head, I hired a PI to investigate Alex. It was expensive, but it was worth it to eliminate the uncertainty I was going through. It took almost a month for the PI to gather all the details. Apart from the already known information, like the ownership of the house and Alex's family history, there was one significant revelation about Alex's ex, Jay. She wasn't just an ex, she was his fiancée. They were engaged a month before the wedding, but something happened that turned their relationship hostile a year ago, before I met Alex. There was no cheating involved. Confronting Alex's ex-fiancée. The PI provided details about Jay, Alex's ex-fiancée. She was well off. Her father was a real estate businessman. A few days later, I went to her office. She was married by then, so I only showed up at her house to talk about her ex-fiancé. She seemed genuine, so I introduced myself as Alex's wife and explained that I needed to discuss something important. Reluctant to talk about her personal life, she initially resisted, but I pressed on. I shared the information about the house and she smiled, saying, "Oh, finally, he was successful in trapping someone for the house." She then revealed everything. She met Alex at a common friend's party, they hit it off, and dated for a year. Alex expressed his desire to own a house, feeling like a déjà vu moment for me. Her father was into real estate, so she took his help to secure some good property deals for Alex. However, Alex kept rejecting them, saying it was beyond his budget. She was already living in a house gifted by her father, so instead of buying his own, Alex moved in with her. They got engaged, but soon after, Alex pressured her to transfer the house to his name. She tried to convince him that ownership didn't matter since they were getting married, but Alex manipulated her with his sob story about his parents never affording a house and his desire to have property in his name. Her father intervened, disapproving of Alex's request. Alex tried to manipulate him too, and her father agreed to let Alex co-own the house, but required a prenuptial agreement stating that if there was a divorce, the house would revert to her. Under no circumstances could Alex sell it or change the ownership. Alex refused to sign the prenuptial agreement and they eventually called it quits. Final betrayal. When I narrated my story to Jay, Alex's ex-fiancée confirmed that it was all an act to trap me into this situation. She revealed that Alex's parents are very conservative and allowed him to marry her only because of her wealth. During our discussion, she also mentioned Jay's case being aggressive in pushing her to agree to Alex's terms. She admitted that she doesn't like modern girls of our ethnicity because they are too dominating, which sounded believable since I never got along well with Alex's family. Alex kept me aside, claiming his family was conservative and didn't want to ruin my peace by letting them meddle in our lives. Jay said it was to keep me away from suspecting anything fishy. My lawyer friend clarified that the house is a bank's asset until the mortgage is covered. Once it's over, it would be handed over to Alex, and he could transfer it to anyone he wants. The document I found in his study was essentially stating that the house would go to his mom after the mortgage was completed. After meeting Jay, I'm pretty sure of his malicious intentions. My gut feeling is that he is betraying me. Update 3. House auction and final confrontation. I've been longing to make this update. The house is finally up for auction. I defaulted on the loan for 6 months and didn't respond to any payment calls. I received an email from the bank informing me they were sending a formal letter of intimation with a final deadline to pay the mortgage. Alex was in the city at that time, but I ensured the letter didn't reach him. I tracked it closely and, as soon as it was dropped in my mailbox, I picked it up and destroyed it. Evil indeed. Last month, bank officials showed up at the house to inform me that if I didn't pay within the next 30 days, the house would be auctioned. I nodded that I would try, but was okay with opting for an auction if I failed. Additionally, Alex is going to suffer severely on his credit score because the loan was in his name. Officially, he's a defaulter, not me. When the bank officials visited the house, they cautioned me that it takes years for a loan defaulter to recover their credit score. Who cares? Good for my man. I received an intimation from the bank to be present for the auction so that the owner of the house could sign the final papers to hand over possession. Essentially, the intimation was for my husband because the loan was in his name. Since he had changed the ownership to his mother, I wasn't sure how this would work. Update 4. House sold and moving on. The house is sold. After a lot of drama, I'm glad I didn't get manipulated by Alex and his pretentious family. Initially, I had no clue how the auction procedure worked. I thought it would be like a normal one where all bidders place their quotations and the highest bidder gets it, then they move into the house and we move out. No, it doesn't work like that. The bank had put the house up for sale at a price that would cover their mortgage amount plus a premium interest rate on the principal. Meanwhile, we were given an eviction notice. I rented a house for myself, and when the notice came, I shipped all the furniture and house decor with me. Only Alex's stuff, like his clothes and accessories, remained in the garage. I left the house because I did not want any reminders of him. The bank officials told me that whenever they got a suitable buyer, they would call, and Alex had to sign the final papers to hand over the house. I waited for the house to be sold before breaking the news to Alex, but he showed up unexpectedly. He was shocked to find the house locked and his stuff lying on the front porch. He called me, yelling about why his stuff was scattered outside. I told him the house was no longer his and that the bank had seized it. He lost his mind. I couldn't see his expression on the phone, but I was sure he was flustered, red with anger, and I was enjoying it. He bombarded me with questions about how and why. I explained that I was at work and needed to hang up, suggesting he meet me at a cafe outside my office in the evening if he needed further details. Within an hour, he was at my office, furious to see me. He understood I was messing around with him. I told him I defaulted on the loan because I had other commitments and had no clue the house would be seized. Maybe if we were in a public place, he would have lashed out physically, but I was cracking up internally. He ranted about how precious the house was to him and how I had shattered his dream. He blurted out, "What's the point of marrying someone outside his community against his parents when he couldn't gain anything from it?" It was shocking, but I didn't lose my resolve. After he finished venting and abusing me, I gave him the paper I found in his study. He stood silent, saying, "I can explain." He revealed that his parents had saved their lifelong earnings and paid for the down payment of the house. For their happiness, he had named them as heirs to the house. He claimed that since his parents were already in their 70s and would die before us, the house would always be ours.
It was such a dumb thing to say.
I asked him why he hid that information and why he didn't make me the co-owner of the house as he had promised. Most importantly, I asked why he hid his past with Jay. He was shocked to hear her name and said, "Oh, that manipulated you." I told him that the house was still not sold to others and that if he was so keen about it, he could always pay the mortgage money and get it back from the bank. He said he didn't have that much money and pleaded with me to do something about it. I refused, and he threatened me with a divorce and a fraud case for defaulting on the loan. I told him to go ahead but be ready to pay the price because I had paid for the house mortgage for the last 3 years. The same day, his mom called me and requested a meeting. That lady had never spoken to me in a complete sentence until that day, and now she was all sweet. I went to the meeting. She made the same request about saving the house. I told her, "How does it matter to you because it is not your house?" She was lost for words and couldn't hide her true self. He turned bitter and said, "That's why I don't like girls of this country. They are big-mouthed like you and use their brains a lot more than required. My son is going to divorce you and marry a girl in our community, then you'll understand." I laughed at her face and said, "It's not the 1950s that you can threaten me with a divorce and get away with it." That same evening, I called my lawyer friend and asked her to proceed with the divorce papers. I claimed the money I paid for the house and compensation. I'm not sure if he would be able to bear that, but I don't care. People like Alex, who prey upon others' emotions for their own benefit, need to pay the price. When he got the papers, he called and pleaded with me to reconsider the divorce terms, saying he couldn't pay the huge amount and that his parents had to sell their grocery store to settle it. I said I didn't care and hung up. I'll make an update after the divorce is finalized. Until then, I'm living my life freely and have already gotten over him in the last 7 months, so yeah, I'm cool about the separation.